Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. Barry Allen, known to the world as the Flash, stood on the rooftop of a high-rise building in Central City, his heart racing faster than the cars speeding below. His mind, however, was running even faster. Just an hour ago, he had been warned about an impending disaster, a massive explosion that would rip through downtown, leveling everything in its path. He had raced across the city using every ounce of his super speed, but no matter how fast he moved, the outcome was always the same. The explosion had already gone off twice. Each time, he failed. The first time, it was a simple miscalculation. He tried evacuating people instead of stopping the explosion itself, not realizing that it was a chain reaction, too quick for even him to intervene. The second time, he attempted to dismantle the device, but it was far more complex than it appeared, its wiring hidden under layers of reinforced steel. Now standing once again on the rooftop, time resetting itself, Barry couldn't shake the creeping sense of dread that washed over him. It was as though the universe was mocking him, forcing him to relive his failure over and over again. His communicator crackled to life.
Very well, gone, you've gone dark, came the voice of Iris West, her tone full of concern.
I don't know, Iris, he replied, running a hand through his hair. I think I am stuck in some kind of time loop. No matter what I do, the explosion keeps happening, and I wake up here right before it goes off again. A time loop, Iris' voice carried both surprise and disbelief. Are you sure? I've relived this moment twice now, Barry said, his voice grim. And it feels like I am the only one who knows it. Just as Barry was about to explain further, the sky above the city shifted, a brief flicker in the cloud. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but Barry caught it. He narrowed his eye. I need help, he muttered. Batman Bruce Wayne was the greatest detective in the world, and if anyone could make sense of this, it was him. Barry knew Gotham was only a blur away, and without wasting another moment, he took off a streak of red lightning, flashing through the night. In Gotham, Bruce Wayne sat brooding in the Batcave, his cape draped over his shoulders, watching a string of surveillance footage that made no sense. His days had been repeating too, each one leading him to the same dead end. Something was wrong with time itself, and the usual detective methods weren't working. He needed more information, but no matter how many theories he formed, they all fell apart. Before Bruce could delve deeper into his investigation, the sound of Barry's arrival echoed through the cave. Bruce, I need your help, Barry said, his voice tight with urgency as he came to a stop in front of Batman. Batman turned slowly, his eyes narrowing beneath the mask flash. Why are you here? Something is wrong with time, Barry explained quickly, pacing as he spoke. I've been trapped in a loop, an explosion goes off, I failed to stop it, and then everything reset. I've tried everything I can think of, but I can't figure it out. I think we were both stuck. Bruce stood crossing his arms. You've experienced it too. Barry nodded. Yeah, have you? Batman moved toward a console, pulling up a series of timelines on the screen. I've noticed anomalies in Gotham too. My nights have been repeating themselves. At first I thought it was the work of a metahuman, but now it's clear this is something more, something we've never encountered. Barry's heart sank. If Batman didn't have a solution, who would? We need to investigate this together, Bruce said. His voice said it. If we were both trapped in this loop, it means there's something deeper at play. Time isn't just repeating it. It's being manipulated. Barry clenched his fists. But by who? Batman didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pressed a button on the console, displaying a map of Central City with multiple red dots scattered across it. These locations, Batman began, pointing to the screen, are where the time anomalies are concentrated. There's a pattern. They all center around one place, the old clock tower in Central City. Barry's eyes widened. The clock tower, but that place has been abandoned for years. Not entirely, Bruce corrected. It was once used by an ancient society that experimented with time manipulation. There are rumors that they built a device called the Chrono Engine, capable of bending time. If that's what's causing this loop, we need to find it and stop it. Barry saw, mind raced, but a new hope flickered within him. He wasn't alone in this anymore, and with Batman, they could figure this out. All right, Barry said, nodding, let's break this loop. Together, they raced towards Central City's clock tower, where the heart of the mystery awaited them. As they approached, the clock tower loomed above them, its hands frozen at midnight, a silent sentinel over the city. The entrance was sealed shut, But Barry phased through the walls while Batman found another way in, slipping through the cracks like a shadow. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of dust and rust, but the sense of something much older permeated the space. This place hasn't had been touched in decades. Barry whispered, scanning the room with his heightened senses. Look closer, Batman replied, crouching down to inspect a set of faint markings on the ground. There's something here. Recent. He traced the outline of what appeared to be symbols carved into the floor, ancient runes that Barry couldn't recognize. Batman's gloved fingers hovered over them, his eyes narrowing. These runes, they're part of an old language, Bruce muttered, pulling out a small device from his belt. They reconnected to time manipulation. Whoever set this up knows exactly what they were doing. Suddenly, a low hum filled the air, growing louder by the second. The entire room began to vibrate, and a strange light emanated from the center of the tower. Before either hero could react, a figure materialized. Before them, a tall man in a tattered cloak, his eyes glowing, an unnatural light. He carried a small mechanical device strapped to his wrist, the source of the strange hum. I see you've found me, the man said, his voice cold and mechanical. I was wondering how long it would take for you to catch on. Batman see his fists tightened. Kronos, the time-traveling villain, smirked, tilting his head. You know me, Batman. I've always been a step ahead of you, but this time, I've gone beyond mere time travel. I've recreated the perfect loop, one that even you can tolerate. Barry felt a surge of anger. Why trap us in this loop? What are you after? Kronos chuckled darkly, raising his wrist to show the device. Control, of course. By trapping you two in this endless loop, I am free to manipulate time elsewhere, rewrite history, bend reality, and no one, not even you, can stop me. You've trapped yourself as well, Batman said, his voice sharp. You re-stuck in this loop with us. Kronos' smirk faltered, if only for a moment, a temporary inconvenience. Once I've fully mastered the chrono engine, I'll escape and leave you to rot in this endless cycle. Barry saw his heart pounded as the reality of their situation sunk in. This wasn't just about stopping a villain. They were fighting to escape a prison of time itself. We'll find a way out, Barry said, his voice filled with determination. You won too, Kronos replied, his voice full of icy certainty, but I'll enjoy watching you try. And with that, the room exploded into chaos. Time itself fractured, the walls around them rippling like waves in a storm. Each fragment of reality seemed to tear apart, sending shards of the past, present, and future hurtling through the air. The world around Barry and Bruce warped, bending and twisting like a mirror, shattering into infinite reflection. Barry barely had time to blink before the fragments of time began to blur together. Faces, voices, and places from the past, present, and potential futures swirled around them, merging into a disorienting vortex. Stay focused, the Batman growled, his voice steady despite the chaos. His cape whipped in the swirling air, but he remained grounded, eyes locked on Kronos, who floated near the fractured heart of the chrono engine. Barry's instincts kicked in. He tapped into the speed force, feeling the comforting hum of power in his veins, and began weaving through the temporal debris like it was second nature. His mind raced with possibilities, but there was only one path that made sense. They had to take out Kronos before the loop collapsed entirely. You distract him, that man shouted, leaping to avoid a spiraling fragment of the past that nearly clipped him. I'll find a way to disable the chrono engine. Barry didn't hesitate. In a blur of red lightning, he charged straight at Kronos. The villain saw him coming, smirking as if anticipating every move. With a flick of his wrist, Kronos triggered the device on his arm, sending pulses of energy that slowed Barry's advance, forcing the speedster to zigzag in erratic patterns just to avoid being caught in the temporal stasis fields Kronos was creating. You can outrun time. Flash, Kronos taunted. Not even you. Maybe not, Barry retorted, his voice a blur in the wind. Sheer, Barry. He phased through one of the fields just as it solidified, then aimed a lightning-fast punch at Kronos, who dodged with the ease of someone who'd seen the move before it happened. Barry clenched his teeth in frustration, trying to find an opening in Kronos' defenses, but the villain was toying with him, manipulating time itself to stay one step ahead. Meanwhile, Batman had already made his way to the base of the chrono engine. The massive device throbbed with an eerie, unnatural energy. its intricate gears and cogs all floating in a temporal rift, twisted and turned in ways that defied physics, each movement sending ripples through the fabric of time. Batman's keen detective mind worked at full speed, analyzing every inch of the machine. He had seen ancient devices before, but nothing like this. It wasn't just a machine, it was a living part of time itself. Bruce narrowed his eyes as he spotted the weak point, a central gear that, if disabled, could destabilize the entire engine. But there was a catch. Destroying it would collapse the loop entirely, resetting time and potentially erasing everything within this temporal bubble. It was a risk, but they had no choice. Barry kept Kronos distracted, using every trick in his arsenal. He vibrated through solid objects, ricketed off walls, and used lightning to try and throw Kronos off balance. But for every move he made, Kronos countered with cold precision, manipulating the flow of time to slow Barry down or force him into trap. "I've seen every outcome, Flash," Kronos said, his voice rising over the chaos. There's no future where you win." Barry's mind raced, but he wasn't ready to give up. "Say me, Faye," he shot back. "Faye, but fair, it's always the first time." Just as he said that, he saw Batman in the distance, near the core of the chrono engine. Barry knew what had to happen. He needed to give Bruce the time to take out the machine. With a final burst of speed, Barry ran straight toward Kronos. But this time, instead of attacking head-on, he created multiple afterimages of himself, distracting Kronos with a dozen illusions moving at once. The villain hesitated, unsure which one was real, just long enough for Barry to strike. He tackled Kronos at super speed, both of them crashing to the floor in a burst of temporal energy. The impact sent shockwaves through the room, and for a brief moment, Kronos' control over time wavered. "Now, Bruce," Barry shouted, holding Kronos down as the villain struggled, his device sparking with instability. Batman did he hesitate. With one precise strike from his Bat-Trang, he severed the main gear holding the chrono engine together. The machine sputtered, its once rhythmic hum turning into a chaotic whine as time itself began to unravel. Kronos' eyes widened in horror. "So I know. You don't know what you were doing. If you destroy the engine, it's out over Kronos or the Batman," interrupted, his voice cold and final. The machine gave one final lurch, and then everything exploded into light. Time itself seemed to collapse inward, sucking everything into a blinding singularity. Barry felt himself being pulled into the vortex, his senses overwhelmed as the very concept of time disintegrated around him, and then silent. Barry blinked. He was standing on the rooftop of a high-rise building in Central City, the sun shining brightly overhead. The city below him was calm, peaceful, as if nothing had ever happened. His heart raced as he realized he wasn't just stuck in the loop anymore. Time had reset, but this time for real. He checked his communicator. He was buzzing with life. Iris' voice coming through the static. "Tyre, Barry. Are you there? What happened?" "Iris. Barry breathed, still dazed. "I think we did it." Just then, he heard the familiar flutter of a cape behind him. Barry turned to see Batman standing there, his expression unreadable as always. "It's done," Bruce said simply. "Yeah," Barry replied, letting out a long breath. "Orion's done." They stood there for a moment, the weight of what they'd just experienced settling over them. They had broken the loop, defeated Kronos, and restored the timeline, but the cost lingered in the back of their mind. In some other version of reality, things had gone much worse. "How did you know it would work?" "I didn't tell you," Batman said, his voice as cold and calculating as ever. "Dear, but I knew we had to take the risk." Barry nodded, understanding in the end it had come down to trust. Trust in each other's abilities and trust that they could make the impossible happen. They had done what no one else could, but the victory felt more like a narrow escape than a triumph. As Barry looked out over Central City, he felt a quiet resolve settle in his chest. There would always be new challenges, new threats to time and reality. But as long as they stood together, he knew they could face whatever came next. The broken clock tower, now silent and still, loomed in the distance, a reminder of the battle they had just fought. But for now, time was theirs again.